12-year-old Sarah Mitchell loves flying. She practices on a flight simulator every day. Her father, James Mitchell, is a real pilot. One day, Sarah and James fly on Flight 447 to Miami. Captain Reynolds and Officer Martinez are the pilots. Suddenly, both pilots black out at 30,000 feet. The plane is in danger. Sarah is scared but brave. She walks to the cockpit and takes the controls. Air traffic controller David Chen helps her from the ground. Can Sarah save 187 lives? Before you watch full story, comment below from which country are you watching. Don't forget to subscribe for more amazing stories. Sarah Mitchell was not like other 12-year-old girls. While her classmates spent hours on social media and video games, Sarah spent her time studying airplanes. Her bedroom walls were covered with pictures of jets, helicopters, and famous pilots. Her bookshelf was full of aviation books and flight manuals. But Sarah's love for flying was not just a hobby. It was her dream. Her passion. Sarah's mother had been a flight attendant before she passed away 3 years ago. She was the one who first introduced Sarah to aviation. Every time her mother flew, she would bring back stories about different countries, emergency procedures, and the incredible feeling of soaring through the clouds. After her mother died, Sarah kept that love alive as a way to feel close to her. Her father, James Mitchell, was a commercial airline pilot with 20 years of experience. Every night at dinner, Sarah would ask him endless questions about flying. How do you land in bad weather? What happens if an engine fails? How do you talk to air traffic control? What do you do in an emergency? James always answered with patience and detail. He was proud of his daughter's interest in aviation. Sometimes he would bring home flight manuals and technical diagrams, and Sarah would study them like they were treasures. For 3 years, Sarah had been using professional flight simulator software on her computer, the same kind that actual pilots use for training. It was not a game. It was real pilot training software. Sarah practiced every single day without fail. She had landed hundreds of times in the simulator and knew every button, switch, and dial in a Boeing 737's cockpit. You fly better than some of my co-pilots, her father would joke. But deep down, he was completely serious. He had watched her practice countless times, and her skill was impressive for someone her age. Today was very special. Sarah and her father were flying to Miami to celebrate her grandmother's 80th birthday. They arrived at Chicago O'Hare International Airport early in the morning. The sun was just rising over the horizon. The airport was busy with travelers pulling suitcases and checking their phones. Sarah loved everything about airports. The smell of coffee from the cafes. The sound of announcements over the speakers. The sight of planes taking off and landing through the big windows. Every time she came to an airport, she felt a thrill of excitement. Can we sit near the front? Sarah asked her father as they checked in. Sure, row 8, window seat. You can see the wing from there, her father replied with a smile. As they walked through security and down to the gate, Sarah watched everything carefully. She noticed the ground crew loading bags. She saw the fuel trucks filling the aircraft. She observed the pilots doing their walk-around inspection. Dad, they're checking the tires and the flaps, Sarah pointed out. That's right. Safety check before every flight, James confirmed, smiling at his daughter's attention to detail. When boarding began, they walked down the jet bridge. Sarah's eyes were wide with excitement. She always felt a thrill when stepping onto an airplane. The flight attendants greeted them warmly. One of them, a kind woman named Lisa with warm eyes and a friendly smile, noticed Sarah's aviation book in her hand. You interested in flying? Lisa asked with a genuine smile. Yes. I want to be a pilot when I grow up, Sarah answered confidently. Well, maybe you can peek into the cockpit before we take off. Let me ask the captain, Lisa offered. Sarah's face lit up. Really? That would be amazing. A few minutes later, Lisa returned. Come with me, honey. Sarah followed Lisa to the front of the plane. The cockpit door was open. Inside, she could see two pilots preparing for the flight. There were hundreds of buttons, switches, screens, and lights. It looked incredibly complicated, but Sarah recognized almost everything from her simulator. Hello there, said the captain. He was a man in his 50s with gray hair and a warm, welcoming smile. His name tag read, Captain Reynolds. Hi, Captain. I'm Sarah. I love airplanes. Sarah said excitedly, her words tumbling out quickly. Is that so? What do you know about planes? The captain asked, genuinely interested. This is a Boeing 737-800. It has 2 engines. It can fly about 3,000 miles. The cruising speed is around 500 miles per hour. The range is approximately 3,000 nautical miles, Sarah answered quickly, speaking like someone much older than 12. Captain Reynolds and his co-pilot, Officer Martinez, exchanged surprised looks. They clearly didn't expect this level of knowledge from a child. Impressive. Have you been studying? Officer Martinez asked. I use a flight simulator at home. I've landed this exact plane hundreds of times. I know the checklist, the procedures, everything, Sarah explained with genuine enthusiasm. Well, keep studying. Maybe one day you'll be sitting in this seat, Captain Reynolds said, pointing to the pilot's chair with a warm smile. That's my dream, Sarah said with a big smile. Thank you so much for showing me. All right, sweetheart, time to take your seat. We're about to close the doors, Lisa said gently. Sarah returned to her seat next to her father, her heart still racing from excitement. She had just met real pilots in the actual cockpit. How was it? James asked. Dad, it was so cool. I recognized everything. The throttle, the autopilot panel, the navigation screens, the instrument cluster. Everything. Captain Reynolds and Officer Martinez were so nice, Sarah said, barely able to contain her excitement. I'm proud of you, Sarah. You really know your stuff, her father said, putting his arm around her. The plane's engine started. Sarah felt the familiar vibration. The safety announcement played overhead. She had heard it 100 times, but she still listened carefully, remembering every word. The plane pushed back from the gate and began moving toward the runway. Sarah pressed her face against the window, watching the airport buildings pass by. Ladies and gentlemen, this is Captain Reynolds. We've been cleared for takeoff. Flight time to Miami will be approximately 2 hours and 40 minutes. We're expecting clear skies and smooth flying. Sit back, relax, and enjoy the flight. Sarah smiled. She loved hearing the captain's voice. It always sounded so calm and confident. The plane turned onto the runway. The engines roared louder as the speed increased. Sarah counted down in her head. 5, 4, 3, 2, 1. The plane accelerated down the runway, faster and faster. Sarah felt herself pressed back into her seat. Then, that magical moment, the nose lifted, and they were flying. Up, up, up they climbed. Through the clouds. Into the blue sky. Sarah looked out the window. The ground below became smaller and smaller. Cars looked like tiny toys. Buildings looked like boxes. It was absolutely beautiful. The seatbelt sign turned off. Flight attendants began moving through the cabin, offering drinks and snacks. Orange juice, please, Sarah told the attendant. Her father got coffee. They sat quietly, enjoying the peaceful flight. Everything was perfect. Everything was normal. But that was about to change forever. 25 minutes into the flight, Sarah noticed something very odd. A flight attendant rushed toward the cockpit. Her face looked worried and anxious. She knocked on the cockpit door and quickly went inside. Sarah's father didn't notice. He was reading a newspaper and had dozed off slightly. But Sarah kept watching, her observant nature kicking in. A few seconds later, the flight attendant came out. Her face was pale. She looked genuinely scared. She immediately picked up the phone and spoke urgently to another crew member in hushed tones. Then came the announcement that changed everything. "Ladies and gentlemen, we are experiencing a situation. Please remain calm and stay seated with your seatbelts fastened." The voice was Lisa's, the kind flight attendant from earlier. But now her voice was shaking noticeably. Passengers began murmuring. Some looked confused. Others looked worried. "What's going on?" someone asked loudly from the back of the cabin. Lisa appeared again at the front of the cabin. She looked around nervously, then spoke into the microphone with an urgent, strained voice. "Is there anyone on board with flight experience? If you know how to fly an aircraft, please come forward immediately. This is an emergency." The cabin erupted with noise. People started talking loudly. Some gasped. Others looked around in panic. A woman screamed. A man stood up and looked around frantically. "What? What does that mean?" a woman shouted from several rows back. "Are the pilots okay?" another passenger asked loudly. "Are we going to crash?" a child cried out. Sarah's heart was pounding so hard she could feel it in her throat. She looked at her father. His face had gone pale. "Dad, something's wrong with the pilots," Sarah whispered, her voice steady despite her fear. Before her father could respond, Sarah made a decision. A decision that would change everything. She unbuckled her seatbelt and stood up. "Sarah, what are you doing?" her father asked, grabbing her arm firmly. "Dad, I need to help. I know how to fly this plane," Sarah said firmly, her voice filled with conviction. "Sarah, no. This is not a simulator. This is real." "You're just a child," James said, his voice filled with fear and desperation. He didn't want to put his daughter in danger. "Dad, you know I can do this. You've seen me practice every single day for 3 years. You know I'm good. If the pilots are unconscious, someone needs to fly this plane. And I'm the only one who knows how," Sarah said, looking directly into her father's eyes. She was right, and deep down, James knew it. James Mitchell stared at his daughter. His 12-year-old daughter. The girl who spent every evening practicing landings on a computer. The girl who could name every instrument in a cockpit. The girl who knew the procedures and emergency protocols. The girl who had the knowledge, but had never flown a real plane in her life. He wanted to say no. Every part of him wanted to protect her, to keep her safe in her seat. But another part of him, the pilot, knew the truth. If the pilots were really unconscious, someone had to fly the plane. And Sarah might be the only person on board who knew how. "Are you absolutely sure?" he asked quietly. "Yes, Dad. I'm sure. I can do this," Sarah answered with determination in her voice. James slowly nodded. "Okay. Go. And be careful." Sarah stepped into the aisle. Every passenger in the surrounding rows stared at her in disbelief. A young girl, no more than 12 years old, walking confidently toward the cockpit. "That's just a kid," someone whispered loudly. "Where are her parents?" another person asked, confused. "What's happening?" a third person wondered aloud. Sarah kept walking despite all the stares. Her legs felt shaky, but she kept moving forward. Lisa saw her coming and looked completely confused. "Honey, you need to sit down. I can help." "I know how to fly this plane," Sarah interrupted, her voice more confident than she felt. Lisa blinked. You're just a child. I've been training on a simulator for 3 years. I know this exact aircraft, Boeing 737-800. I know the controls. I know how to land. I spoke to Captain Reynolds before takeoff. Please, let me help. There's no time to waste, Sarah said quickly and clearly. Lisa looked uncertain. She glanced back at the cockpit door, then back at Sarah. She made a quick decision. Lives were at stake. Come with me, Lisa said. They rushed to the cockpit. Lisa knocked and opened the door. What Sarah saw inside made her heart drop to her stomach. Captain Reynolds was slumped over in his seat, completely unconscious. His head was tilted to the side. His hands were off the controls. Officer Martinez was also unconscious, leaning back in his chair, mouth slightly open, unresponsive. Both pilots were completely unresponsive. The autopilot was the only thing keeping the plane in the air. Oh my God, Lisa whispered, her voice breaking with emotion. But Sarah didn't freeze. She had trained for emergencies in the simulator. Her instructor always said, in a crisis, stay calm and think clearly. Your knowledge and training will take over. Help me get them out of the seats, Sarah said, her voice surprisingly steady despite her racing heart. Lisa and another flight attendant who had joined them carefully unbuckled the unconscious pilots and moved them to the small jump seats behind the main cockpit chairs. Sarah climbed into the co-pilot's seat. The chair was far too big for her. Her feet barely reached the pedals. But the instrument panel in front of her was exactly like the one in her simulator at home. She scanned the screens quickly, her training kicking in. Altitude, 30,000 feet. Speed, 480 knots. Heading, southeast. The autopilot was engaged. The plane was flying level and steady. Thank God for autopilot, Sarah thought. But she knew autopilot wouldn't last forever. Eventually, the plane would need to descend, turn, and land. An autopilot couldn't handle the final approach and landing by itself. Sarah took a deep breath and reached for the radio. Her hand was shaking, but she pressed the button with determination. Mayday, Mayday, Mayday. This is Flight 447. Both pilots are unconscious. I need immediate assistance. Over. Static. No response. She tried again, adjusting the frequency to the emergency channel. Mayday, Mayday. Flight 447. Both pilots down. Request immediate help. Over. This time, a voice crackled through the speaker. Flight 447, this is Cleveland Center. Repeat your last message. Who is speaking? Sarah took a deep breath to steady her voice. My name is Sarah Mitchell. I'm 12 years old. Both pilots are unconscious. I'm in the co-pilot seat. I need help flying this plane. There was a very long pause. Sarah could almost hear the shock on the other end of the radio. Did you say? 12 years old, the voice asked slowly, disbelief evident in his tone. Yes, sir. But I know how to fly. I've been training on a simulator for 3 years. I know this aircraft inside and out. Please, I need guidance, Sarah said firmly. At the Cleveland Air Traffic Control Center, Controller David Chen stared at his screen in complete disbelief. Around him, other controllers had gone absolutely silent, listening to the radio transmission. She's just a kid, someone whispered in shock. What do we do? Another controller asked nervously. David took a moment to process what he had just heard. Then he pressed the microphone button. He had been an air traffic controller for 15 years. He had handled many emergencies before, engine failures, medical emergencies, even a hijacking attempt once. But this? A child flying a commercial jet? This was absolutely unprecedented. But there was no time to hesitate. Lives were at stake. 187 lives. All right, Sarah. My name is David. I'm going to help you. First, can you confirm your current altitude and heading? Altitude 30,000 feet. Heading 135 degrees. Speed 480 knots. Autopilot is engaged, Sarah answered with impressive clarity and precision. David checked his screen. Every single detail of the information matched perfectly. This kid really did know what she was talking about. Okay, Sarah. That's correct. You're doing good. For now, leave everything as it is. The autopilot is keeping you stable and level. We're going to reroute you to Columbus International Airport, about 60 miles ahead. It has the longest runway in the region. Do you understand? Yes, sir. Columbus International, Sarah confirmed. Good. Now, have you ever flown a real aircraft before? No, sir. Only in the simulator at home. But I've done hundreds of landings in the simulator. I know all the procedures, Sarah answered honestly. Back in the cabin, James Mitchell stood up. His voice was loud and firm, commanding attention from everyone around him. My daughter is flying the plane. The cabin went completely silent. Your daughter? Someone asked, confused. Yes. She's 12 years old. She's been training for this for 3 years. She knows this aircraft perfectly. She knows how to fly. And right now, she's the only chance we have. So instead of panicking, I suggest we all stay quiet and let her focus on what she's doing. Some passengers stared in shock. A few gasped. But slowly, the panic subsided into nervous, tense silence. In the cockpit, Sarah listened carefully to David's instructions, focusing completely. Sarah, I'm going to teach you how to change the heading. We need to turn the plane slightly to the left. Do you see the heading knob on the mode control panel in front of you? Yes, I see it, Sarah confirmed. Good. I want you to turn it slowly to the left. Change the heading from 135 to 090. That will point you directly toward Columbus. Turn it slowly and smoothly. Sarah reached out and carefully turned the knob with precision. The heading display changed gradually. The plane began a gentle, smooth turn to the left. Heading now 090. The plane is turning, Sarah reported. Excellent. You're doing perfect, Sarah. Now the plane will fly straight toward Columbus. We have about 40 minutes until we need to start descending. During that time, I'm going to explain everything you need to do, step by step. Are you ready? Yes, sir. I'm ready, Sarah said. Her hands were sweating, but her voice was steady and focused. For the next 30 minutes, David walked Sarah through every single step of the landing procedure. He explained when to reduce altitude, when to lower the flaps, when to extend the landing gear, when to reduce speed, when to disengage autopilot, when to take manual control. The exact angles and procedures for the final approach. Sarah listened to every single word carefully. She repeated everything back to make sure she understood completely. In the control center, David's supervisor contacted the airline, the FAA, and emergency services on the ground. Fire trucks and ambulances were dispatched to Columbus International Airport. The runway was completely cleared of all traffic. All other flights in the airspace were diverted away. The entire aviation community was watching this unfold. News of a 12-year-old flying a commercial jet had spread quickly through aviation channels. Television news stations interrupted their regular programming with breaking news alerts. We have an incredible and developing story. A 12-year-old girl is currently piloting a Boeing 737 after both pilots became unconscious. The plane is being guided by air traffic control toward an emergency landing in Columbus, Ohio. Back on the plane, passengers sat in tense silence. Some held hands. Others prayed quietly. A few stared out the windows, watching the clouds pass by. James Mitchell sat in his seat, gripping the armrests so hard his knuckles turned white. His heart was pounding. Every part of him wanted to be in that cockpit with his daughter. But he knew she had to do this alone. She had to prove that she could do this. Please, God, keep her safe, he whispered to himself. In the cockpit, Sarah was preparing for the critical descent phase. Sarah, it's time. We're going to start descending now. I want you to change the altitude setting from 30,000 to 10,000. Turn the altitude knob slowly, David instructed. Sarah adjusted the knob carefully. The plane's nose dipped slightly as it began descending. Descent started. Altitude now 29,500 and decreasing, Sarah reported. Perfect. Now, reduce your speed to 250 knots. Pull the throttle back gently. Not too fast. Just a little bit at a time, David said calmly. Sarah placed her hand on the throttle lever. She remembered practicing this exact movement hundreds of times in her simulator. She pulled it back slowly and smoothly. The engine's roar decreased slightly. Speed reducing. Now at 270 knots, Sarah said. As the plane descended through the clouds, Sarah felt a strange mix of fear and focus. She was absolutely terrified, but she couldn't let fear control her. She had to stay calm. Lives depended on it. Sarah, you're doing amazing. I've been a controller for 15 years, and I've never seen anyone handle pressure like this. You're a natural, David said sincerely. Thank you, sir. But I'm really scared, Sarah admitted quietly. That's okay. Fear is normal. But you're not letting it control you. That's what makes you strong. That's what makes you brave. Now, we're going to continue descending. Keep watching your altitude. The plane descended through 20,000 feet. Then 15,000. Then 10,000. Columbus International Airport was now visible in the distance with its bright runway lights glowing against the sky. Sarah, do you see the airport? David asked. Yes. I see it. The runway lights. Sarah said, her voice filled with a mix of excitement and relief. Excellent. Now, we're going to prepare for final approach. This is the most important part. Are you ready? Sarah took a deep breath. Yes, sir. I'm ready. Good. First, extend the flaps to position 5. Do you see the flap lever? Yes, I see it, Sarah confirmed. Pull it down to 5. Sarah moved the lever with careful precision. She heard and felt the flaps extending from the wings. The plane slowed down slightly. Flaps 5. Speed now 220 knots, Sarah reported. Perfect. Now, descend to 5,000 feet. Adjust the altitude knob. Sarah made the adjustment smoothly. The plane continued descending toward the airport. Sarah, I'm going to guide you onto the final approach path. You're going to follow the instrument landing system. It's called ILS. Do you know what that is? Yes. It's the system that helps line up the plane with the runway. I use it in the simulator all the time, Sarah said. Exactly right. You're going to see 2 indicators on your screen. One shows if you're lined up with the centerline of the runway. The other shows if you're on the correct glide path. Do you see them? Sarah looked at the navigation display carefully. Yes, I see them. Good. Keep the needle centered. That means you're perfectly aligned with the runway. Sarah watched the screen carefully. The plane was slightly to the right of the centerline. She gently turned the heading to correct it. Good, Sarah. You're doing it perfectly, David said. The plane descended through 3,000 feet. Extend flaps to 15, David instructed. Sarah moved the lever again. More flaps extended from the wings. Flaps 15. Confirmed, she said. Now, reduce speed to 180 knots. Sarah pulled the throttle back more. The plane slowed steadily. Speed 180. Confirmed. Now, extend landing gear. This was a significant moment. Sarah found the landing gear lever. It was a large handle with 3 green lights above it. She pulled it down with determination. A loud mechanical sound filled the cockpit as the wheels extended from the belly of the plane. Moments later, 3 green lights illuminated on the instrument panel. Landing gear down. 3 green lights. All confirmed, Sarah reported, her voice filled with relief and confidence. Beautiful. You're doing everything perfectly, Sarah. Now, extend flaps to full. Position 30. Sarah moved the flaps to the final position. Flaps 30. Full flaps extended. Confirmed, she said. The plane was now at 2,000 feet, descending steadily and smoothly toward the runway below. Sarah, this is it. In about 2 minutes, you're going to land this plane. I need you to listen very carefully to everything I say. Can you do that? Yes, sir, Sarah said. Her heart was pounding so hard she could hear it in her ears. You're going to continue descending until you're about 50 feet above the runway. Then, you're going to gently pull back on the control yoke. That will raise the nose slightly. The back wheels will touch first. Then the front wheel will come down. After you're on the ground, you'll pull the throttle all the way back and press the brakes firmly. Do you understand? Yes. Pull back on the yoke at 50 feet. Back wheels first, then front wheel. Pull throttle back. Press brakes, Sarah repeated, committing every word to memory. Exactly. You've got this, Sarah. You're going to do it perfectly. The plane descended through 1,000 feet. The runway was getting closer and closer. Sarah could see it clearly now. 500 feet. She adjusted the throttle slightly. The plane slowed to 150 knots. 300 feet. The runway was right in front of her. She could see the white lines painted down the center. 200 feet. Her hands gripped the yoke firmly and steadily. 100 feet. Almost there, Sarah. Looking perfect. You're doing great, David's calm voice said in her ear. 50 feet. Sarah gently pulled back on the yoke. The nose of the plane lifted slightly. 30 feet. 20 feet. 10 feet. The back wheels touched the runway with a slight, gentle bump. Then the front wheel came down smoothly. They were on the ground. Pull throttle back. Brakes. David shouted. Sarah pulled the throttle all the way back. She pressed her feet down on the brake pedals with firm pressure. The plane slowed rapidly. The engines roared in reverse thrust, helping to slow the aircraft. Slower. 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 And then, the plane came to a complete stop on the runway. Sarah had done it. She had landed the plane. For a moment, there was absolute silence. Then, chaos erupted. In the cabin, passengers erupted into cheers, screams, and tears. People were hugging each other tightly. Some were crying with relief and joy. Others were laughing in disbelief at what had just happened. We're alive. She did it. Oh my God, we're on the ground. James Mitchell unbuckled his seatbelt and rushed toward the cockpit, his legs shaking. Lisa let him through immediately. When he entered the cockpit, he saw his daughter sitting in the co-pilot's seat, still gripping the yoke with white knuckles, her hands shaking, tears streaming down her face. Sarah, he said softly. She turned to look at him. Dad. I did it. I actually did it. I landed it. You did, baby. You saved everyone on this plane. You're a hero, he said, pulling her into his arms. Sarah finally let herself cry. All the fear, all the pressure, all the adrenaline came pouring out in waves. In the control center, David Chen leaned back in his chair, tears streaming down his face. "She did it," he said to his supervisor in amazement. "That little girl actually landed a 737. The entire control room erupted in applause and cheers. Outside the plane, emergency crews rushed forward quickly. Paramedics boarded the aircraft immediately to check on the unconscious pilots and all the passengers. Captain Reynolds and Officer Martinez were carefully carried out on stretchers and transported to the hospital. Later, doctors determined they had suffered from hypoxia, a life-threatening lack of oxygen caused by a pressurization system failure. Both pilots recovered fully after receiving oxygen treatment. Sarah was escorted off the plane by paramedics. As she stepped onto the tarmac, she was met with loud applause from the emergency crews. "You're a hero, kid," one firefighter shouted at her. News cameras were already there, capturing everything for the world to see. A woman in a pilot's uniform approached her. "Sarah Mitchell?" she asked. "Yes, ma'am," Sarah replied, exhausted but smiling. "I'm Captain Jennifer Hughes, chief pilot for the airline. What you did today was absolutely extraordinary. You saved 187 lives. You are a true pilot. One of the bravest people I've ever met." 5 years after the incredible incident, Sarah Mitchell became the youngest person ever to earn a private pilot's license at age 17. She went on to attend the United States Air Force Academy and graduated at the very top of her class with honors. Today, at age 25, Captain Sarah Mitchell is a commercial airline pilot, flying the same Boeing 737s she once practiced on in her simulator. She also works as a motivational speaker, traveling around the world to inspire young people, especially young girls, to pursue careers in aviation. "Don't let anyone tell you you're too young, too small, or not ready," she tells students wherever she speaks. "If you have the knowledge, the courage, and the heart, you can do anything. Age is just a number. What matters is preparation and determination." The story of Flight 447 is now taught in aviation schools and universities around the world as a fascinating case study in emergency management, crisis communication, and the power of preparation and training. Sarah's scholarship fund, the Sarah Mitchell Young Aviators Scholarship, has helped over 200 young pilots, especially girls from underprivileged backgrounds, pursue their dreams. She personally funds it with money from her book deals and speaking engagements. On the 10th anniversary of Flight 447, Sarah captained a commemorative flight on the exact same route, Chicago to Miami. Her father sat in row 8, seat B, the same seat he had occupied 10 years earlier. Many original passengers returned for the special flight. Before takeoff, Sarah made an announcement: "Welcome aboard this very special flight. 10 years ago, I sat in this cockpit as a scared 12-year-old girl, trying to save your lives. Today, I sit here as a trained pilot, honored to fly you again. This flight represents a full circle. A journey from fear to confidence. From uncertainty to mastery. From girl to captain. Thank you for trusting me then. And thank you for trusting me now." The passengers erupted in applause. Captain Reynolds, who had fully recovered, was present as an honored guest. He sat in the cockpit jump seat the entire flight, watching his former co-pilot with pride and admiration. "You did it, Sarah," he told her after the plane landed safely in Miami. "You didn't just become a pilot. You became the best kind of pilot, one who understands what it means to stay calm under pressure and save lives."